So the astrology of the week of 14 February 2022 through 20 February 2022 is a week of highs and lows in some ways, because we have this very intense full moon in Leo that opposes Saturn and that gets us involved in kind of the really dynamic exchanges in the fixed axis. But then we follow it with this waning moon cycle, a luscious Virgo moon that's very restful, and there's a lot of kind of opportunities with this Virgo moon. And then we end the week with Pisces season beginning, the sun entering Pisces. And now we start moving out of this heavy Saturn ruled part of winter. Let's dive now into the charts. Let's get into the week. My name is S.J. Anderson. I'm an astrologer. Every week on my channel, I post a video about the astrology of the week ahead, looking at it from the perspective of my astrology, the charts I'm interested in as maybe most important, most useful, trying to gather themes, trying to gather maybe bigger stories or narratives or themes that can help us embrace the week. And then at the same time, I do pick two charts to go into the nicety of the moment, because it's always useful with astrology to have the thematic underpinning, the narrative and thematic underpinning, and then the detail orientation of maybe technical, the technical side of astrology, the specific techniques. You know, astrology can be so technical sometimes. I think it can be, it's a phase we all have to go through as we learn astrology to really understand the technical component of it. But sometimes I feel like the technical side can take us down and water us, and kind of we can get lost in this specific question. Oh, is this day chart or night chart? And what's the degree in this? We get lost in what maybe might be a more obvious narrative when you just kind of extract these basic energies that are so obvious. And in our current moment in time, the most basic theme has been Saturn ruling 5 of the traditional planets, and then the moon, when it comes through, 6 of the traditional planets. We've had heavy Saturn for a few weeks, you know, and that's a major theme. And so you can kind of throw out the obsession with technique on the one hand and just acknowledge how much of a grind and the Saturnine nature of reality has been emergent, and then it's been in competition with Jupiter and Pisces, maybe bringing the kind of watershed moments to kind of heal and interact with Saturn. And I think we've seen that. I mean, so that's kind of the high level theme. We've seen it, you know, there's all kinds of movement happening. Pisces is a mutable sign. There is coming out of the heavy Saturn of the last few years, while we're having to still engage with it as we come out of it. And so I really prefer actually an astrology that just kind of stays at these highest levels and big themes, or engages that part of astrology directly and often, because I think it's where we get the richness of epiphany. And I've got some construction going on. I can't help, I've got to record the video. These guys are just constructing. It's just part of life. So if they interrupt, just excuse me. It hasn't been as constant. It's been like little minutes of it here and there. So we'll just have to roll with it. But what I was saying was that the high level nature of these kind of epiphany orientations of high level themes in astrology can sometimes be where we have breakthroughs interpersonally, like telling someone you have Saturn on your midheaven, the 10th, that's the 10th house, the sector where their career is, and then it confirming for them, wow, maybe they changed jobs or they felt trapped in their workplace. I mean, that one opening can just create a real, it's the part of astrology where then we can see the power of it from a very simple, clear set of symbols happening in the chart. And so that's what I like to do in these videos. I'm trying to stay thematic and high level, and then at the same time bring in some of the specific charts to get some of the technique that I know some people really like, and that I think can be important too, don't get me wrong. And you'll see here later in the transit of the week, there's this technical side of it is why I pick this lunar transit. It's why I pick these lunar transits every week, is because of some detailed technical astrology. But then we can come up high level and engage it at the level of the theme, the importance of the theme of those transits. So I think that's enough of an introduction. There's a lot to cover this week. I mean, I could talk about a lot more before we dive in, but let's just keep moving. I want to move fast. I want to try to move fast and try to get into all of the stuff that's going down this week, because there's a lot. So let's go to these aspects this week. We have Mercury in Aquarius on Monday, late Monday, about 11 p.m. here in Central Europe where I am. And this is going to be great. This is going to be wonderful because now we have Mercury faster. It's moving direct. It's entering Aquarius, where Mercury has a bunch of power. A friend of mine, an astrologer friend of mine, always talks about, well, Mercury may be exalted in Aquarius if you use modern astrological systems. Either way, if you want to go that route or just use the ancient system, Mercury has great power in Aquarius. It's the night triplicity ruler, and it's an air sign. We know Mercury, its nature is of the air element, thought, conversation, writing, thinking, analysis, technical things. This is all air element. But then we have the Egyptian terms. In these early degrees of Aquarius, Mercury is powerful in its Egyptian terms. So this is kind of a reckoning moment, a homecoming kind of moment where Mercury now can finish out these last degrees of its shadow with a lot of power and a place in the sky that it really likes. I'm excited for, all of your mercurial stuff. It'll be done with Pluto by the time it makes this ingress. So that intensity of the last week, I felt it quite a bit. Anytime Pluto gets involved with the planet, it can bring weirdness, strangeness, just serious conversation, excavation, my favorite keyword. But now it's more of an active phase with Mercury. Maybe we're out doing business and getting more involved. And I think there's some transits this week that could be supportive of selling things or maybe purging, but getting in more of a business orientation. So that happens on Monday. Then Wednesday is a big day this week because Venus and Mars will make the first of two conjunctions that they're going to make this late winter. This happens Wednesday, 3:30 Central Europe. It's here in those middle degrees of Capricorn. Venus and Mars meet. This is always a conjunction of heat, of the body, potentially eroticism, relational dynamics, direct engagement with others, artistic, generative kind of activity. This is an awesome conjunction. Venus and Mars are like the brother and sister or the husband and wife or the partners of the zodiac. And when they come together, it really does create power for an activity around love and connection and eros and eroticism. Look for that this week here on Wednesday, 3:30. And then about 2 hours later, around 6, we get the culmination moment, the Leo full moon. And so I think this Wednesday will be quite rocky, potentially. I mean, Venus and Mars joining can also bring, if there's like culminations of issues in a partnership or relationship, sharing or discussing things, or, gosh forbid, I was going to say God forbid. I kind of like saying gosh. I don't know. As I've gotten older, I've kind of like to keep those sacred names sacred. But, there may be some drama with the relationship that can culminate in some passion. I mean, this kind of thing can happen. But then with the Leo full moon right around the same time, we have the solar lunar cycle also bringing a dynamic activated intensity. And when you think about it, actually the sun and moon are the same, the king and queen of the sky, the partners of the sky. So there's a lot of partnership stuff happening here on Wednesday, of culmination, of energetic, activation. So, you might want to I don't know if date night, I don't know if I would be doing date night here. I think maybe it's better to do that, maybe the Valentine's Day date night, and then use the midweek kind of culminations to, maybe stay home, or I don't know. I mean, where I'm from in Austin, we had these full moon swims at a place called Barton Springs. It's a spring in the middle of the city. And every full moon, we would just go out and then we howl at the moon. Everybody does it during the full moon. And I kind of actually, I'm going to be honest, I like just diving into intense moments like this, go out and do stuff. As an astrologer, that's my personality. As an astrologer, I don't know if, I'd recommend to get out and engage when this energy can be so potentially volatile with this conjunction and this opposition with the sun and the moon. But if you like that, if you like being on the edge of life, maybe you use this Wednesday to kind of dive into things and go out and explore. I'm going to talk all about this full moon here in one of the two charts I'm going to look at. What do I have here? Let me read here. Venus and Mars conjoined Wednesday, the intensity of connection in heavy Saturn-ruled Capricorn, the beauty of power and force. Yeah, how beautiful is it when you have a powerful, forceful energy to do things and initiate. I think the beauty, particularly I'm focused more on Mars here because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And then we have the full moon as a punctuation along the fixed axis. There's this big story for the rest of the year, rest of 2022, Saturn and the nodes in the fixed axis. When we have full moons or new moons here, they activate those nodes. And this actually full moon is at the north bending. So it's at the point where the moon is bending now from being the highest above the sun, the ecliptic. And so there is a nodal eclipse activation here with this north bending, full moon. I'll get in the chart. It's a few degrees away from the north bending, or it may be very, very close. I don't recall here. We'll go into it later. But then finally, this is a huge thing about this week. We start Pisces season. The sun enters Pisces. It now begins to loosen Saturn's container on the sky. We've had Jupiter alone, right, in Pisces, trying to activate the kind of cleansing waters and healing waters of Pisces, the changeability of that Jupiter, of that truth and wisdom and justice that Jupiter can bring. Now planets, the rest of these next few months, will just in order start joining Jupiter. The sun moves through Jupiter in Pisces season. But we have, I think the order is that first it's Mercury, then it's Venus, then it's Mars. The sun will leave at some point before Mars. No, actually Mars enters right as the sun is still there. And no. Let me reframe this. The sun leaves before Mars arrives in April. The sun leaves and enters Aries before Venus arrives in early April. I think that Mercury and the sun will spend some time together in Pisces with Jupiter. There will be that stellium with the sun, Mercury, and Jupiter in actually, you know what? Let me just get solar fire up. I as an astrologer, I dislike offering a conversation about something without having, without getting the dates exact. And let's just do it here. It's very quick. You can see my solar fire. Let's just move this through. Mercury comes in here. Yes, I was correct about that. There is that stellium we're going to have with Jupiter, Mercury, and the sun. And that will be in the middle of March, right towards the end of Pisces season. And this could be, it's all about Pisces. The main point I'm making is that Pisces now becomes the power sign, and Saturn loses its grip because now Pisces gets more dynamic with more planets there, and so it's more of a competition now. It's almost like we're giving way slowly over the weeks to where we'll have these epic culminations in Pisces with that solar eclipse on the 30th of April I've been talking about. You'll have a bunch of conjunctions in Pisces. I tweeted about this last night. I'd have a thread that lists all the exact dates. I don't want to cast that here. But the main point is just Pisces season begins. We get less Saturn now. That happens this week. That happens Friday. Get excited. Maybe you'll feel into that some this weekend. How you want to engage all of this heavy Pisces this late winter, early spring. Sun in Pisces, consciousness, fire, coming in to shine light on Pisces. Great opportunity to do that. This week it begins. So let me shift back out. Let me get out of solar fire here. Let me come back to the PowerPoint. Let's go now to the lunar aspects and what's the moon doing this week. Not the aspects, just the phase and the signs that the moon's involved in. Yeah, we'll talk about some aspects too, but we start the week with the moon in Cancer, finishing its transit through its home sign of Cancer in those late degrees. It makes the opposition to Mercury and Pluto before Pluto enters Aquarius. And I think it's been like this all weekend. Sunday, where I am today, and early Monday, it's activating the Pluto Mercury. Even though that's separating, it's still being activated now by the moon. And I just think, you might want to talk about or think about or write about the heavy duty themes of life and reality. What is the meaning of life? What is evil? Does evil exist? I've been thinking about that. Actually, earlier today, it came up someone sent me a video and they were debating this, a little bit about is evil real, and very Plutonic, very mercurial, so debating these intense topics. But we get that here Monday. What happens about midday Monday, Central Europe, moon enters Leo. We begin building to that culmination. The moon will oppose Saturn in Aquarius. The moon will be ruled by that sun in Aquarius, that exiled sun. So there's this story every winter with these Leo new moons. It brings us into conversations about the self. And maybe, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, when you have winter, the self cannot be the priority because you need people to survive. You need, I've had technicians in here for the heater, it's cold, at night. And if you don't have people to help to get through the harshness of winter, that's not going to be good. And so, but that's, I think, the symbolism of the sun in Aquarius. It defers to the collective energy and to these other larger structures for survival. But this Leo moon will be ruled by that sun, exiled in Aquarius. Then we get here on Wednesday, so the full moon hits, but then later in the evening on Wednesday, this is really the energy really kind of sweetens up, and we get almost an immediate softening with a Virgo moon transit, a waning moon, or the restful side of Mercury, where the thinking can help us, purge things or let go of things. Sometimes we need to use our wisdom, our intellect, and our kind of skills to sell things, right? Let's say you want to trim down your possessions. Well, you have to then find a buyer for some of those possessions or post pictures online. This is the kind of Virgo Mercury that can come in, in a waning cycle. And that starts here right after the full moon. This Virgo moon is a wonderful moon. It's going to be my transit of the week. There's a very powerful Mercury in Aquarius that rules this full moon, as we've already discussed about Mercury. It aspects Jupiter and Venus. It'll be bona fide by an enclosure between Jupiter and Venus. And so I love this Virgo moon. It's an awesome waning Virgo moon. The earthiness of it. Let me not launch into all that here. That's going to be my transit of the week, so I'll talk about that later. The Libra moon then comes next on Friday. No, that's just on Saturday. The moon will enter Libra early in the morning on the 19th. And I think this Libra moon is waning, but see, the interesting thing about it is that we're now in between two conjunctions of Venus and Mars. So we have the one earlier this week on Wednesday, but then the next one comes in early March. Now what happens is that Mars has passed Venus, but then Venus catches up to Mars and they meet again at 0 Aquarius, the degree of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the winter solstice in December. And so we're in between this time when this dance of Venus and Mars may be at its most potent. And so you have a moon, you have two moons here waning, first in Libra, then in Scorpio, where that moon is ruled by this Venus-Mars conjunction. And I think about waning moons as purgative. I think about Capricorn sometimes can be purgation energy, where we're kind of the force of leaving or letting go of things as a way to get to foundations, right? And so, like I was saying earlier, we're in this Valentine's Day, you have date night maybe, you get the real culmination on Wednesday with the full moon and with the exact conjunction of Mars and Venus. But I think this weekend waning transit and then next week's transits through Scorpio, we might be talking now about letting go of some things in our relationships. Maybe stuff's come up. So often there can be the post-Valentine's Day breakups. I mean, that's a really common thing where people want to have a partner and then they realize, oh, this didn't work out or the date didn't go as well. And maybe it's not like a serious breakup, but just, letting go of that date, the person that you were, trying a Valentine's Day with. So if the relationships aren't surviving this week, I think this phase of the letting go here on this weekend, maybe it's when we're digesting that realization. And even if it's not a breakup, maybe it's just the reconfigurations that are going to happen with the Mars-Venus cycle and these conjunctions, where it's an opportunity to initiate new styles of engagement or new relational boundaries and new agreements around our relationships with these two planets. But the waning moon, first in Libra, then in Scorpio, a real time here this weekend and early next week to maybe bring those things and settle and purge relationally. So, okay, that's the moon. That's a quick little summary of the moon through the signs. It's always so hard, I want to dive in. There's so much to say about everything. But let's keep moving because there's a lot more going on in my slides here, and there's a lot more happening this week. Now let's go to these charts. First chart, full moon in Leo. It's not an easy full moon. It is ruled by the sun. The sun is in exile. The sun is with Saturn and Aquarius. So much of this moon is flowing back into Saturn and Aquarius as the kind of the fundamental energetic kind of nature of this full moon is Saturn and Aquarius. It's how I would want to delineate it via the rulership trees, just a domicile tree. Moon ruled by sun, sun ruled by Saturn, Saturn with the sun. And so the other thing about it is that the moon is also in the Egyptian terms of Mars. You see it here. And so you have and the sun is in the Egyptian terms of Saturn. So the sun is double Saturn ruled. The moon has a martial component, but Mars is ruled by Saturn, Mars and Capricorn. So we're flowing, all of this flows back into that heavy Saturn dominance in the sky that I was talking about earlier in the introduction. And so, I'm just going to say again, sun in exile, sun rules the moon, the selfhood, the sense of me, I, me, mine, to think about George Harrison's famous song, I, me, mine, on the Let It Be record. That documentary, it was so cool to see how that song got involved. He brought it and they kind of laughed at him. And then that song is one of the coolest songs on that record. And it's very well known, you know. You can see how even in, maybe that's a great example of like the sun in Aquarius. That could be a cool metaphor. You know, George Harrison presents his work of art and the group kind of doesn't really like it at first. And he had to work through probably that sense of being rejected. His bandmates laughed at him. This is the kind of stuff that the sun in Aquarius can feel, the kind of, you know, feelings that can emerge with the sun in Aquarius. But then the Saturn component takes over, where he just kept at it, and then the bandmates come around and they realize, hey, this helps the collective, this helps the goal. Saturn is goals, right? Long-term goals. In the air sign, the making side of an air sign, Mars in Capricorn, the building and the making, with Venus, art. So he stayed with it, and then that song forms into a beautiful track, classic track on the record. So if there are disappointments with this culmination and this full moon, you can kind of stay with things during an Aquarius moon. And actually, I think that record was during an Aquarius season. If I recall the dates, it's like January and I think into February. Should we get the date up on that? Should we just throw out here, go to Google, and this is the kind of stuff that, like I said, when I do dates, let's see, I, me, mine, recording date. Let's just check it, because I think it actually was during an Aquarius season. So this would have been recorded, so no, it was 3 January, and then they came back and they put the strings in, Phil Spector, in April. So that was actually during Capricorn season. But still, it's Saturn, and okay, let me come back here and let me not get on these. If you start allowing Google in these talks, it's like we'll just be Googling things during all of the talks. So let me come back. But anyhow, it's symbolic that if you have the ego has to be set aside, there may be dents to the ego, but in service of these larger structures, the Saturn and Aquarius. And then we have, you know, so this is a whole conversation about Saturn strong in Aquarius with the sun, that I would begin taking my analysis of the full moon. That's just kind of the heart of my analysis of this full moon. And I have here on this next slide, well, what's the opportunity? Reliance on Saturn's power in Aquarius. We have to keep that in mind. Saturn is very strong, and we're now we're almost down to a year left. So we've had the majority of our time of Saturn and Aquarius has been experienced. We're now with less than, it's about 13 months left of Saturn and Aquarius, of a 2.5 year cycle of Saturn there. So by this time, we're hopefully can now be using the energy. We may be used to it. The changes in our reality. Remember, March 2020 is when Saturn comes into Aquarius. The reality completely changes. We're all on Zoom. The world changes. But we're used to that now. We have adjusted to that. And so I'm just thinking that one way to think about this full moon is it's been a good stretch of time. What's been constructed in your life in 2021? Those 3 months in 2020, what's been built and constructed attitudinally, your nation, the sense of your selfhood and how you think about who you are and your role in this world. This might be time with the full moon here where we can really step into that and rely on those new configurations that Saturn has brought our lives. And that's the support here, that's the assistance here. And it's going to be different for everybody. You know, I've certainly got my own story with it, but this is time to begin using the Saturn and deploying this Saturn. And then I have here Mars is averse and exalted. And so sometimes when you have planets in aversion, they can be where we can just, you know, sort of not engage directly with the full moon and the Saturn so much, but maybe come back into the Mars-Venus in Capricorn. Saturn rules Mars and Venus in Capricorn, so there is a connection via Saturn's rulership. The Saturn energy might be best activated potentially through that relational side, or even what I was saying earlier, the beauty of power and force. Like these guys that are doing construction back here. I mean, it's kind of beautiful in a way. I know it doesn't sound like it, but the noises of life are almost like their own symphony sort of thing. And they're building something. These guys are doing Mars. They're doing Saturn. They're building renovating the external part of an apartment building, or one apartment in a building. And that's awesome, you know. You get to build something. The family that's going to get those renovations, they're going to be enjoying that. So these are the kind of maybe energies we can access now. What are we building? What are we moving into? Mercury is now here in this full moon chart. Mercury is with the Sun and Saturn. Mercury is very powerful. The logical business side of how we can move into our new structures are also here supporting things. And then where is so this is right at This is the south bending. Pardon me, in Aquarius. This is not the north bending. We're at the south bending here. Because when the moon goes and makes a conjunction to the south node in late Scorpio, it goes under the ecliptic. And then it travels under the ecliptic until it hits the south bending here in the sun is at the south bending, the late degrees of Aquarius. The moon is at the north bending. So I was right earlier. Moon at the north bending, sun at the south bending. This full moon will be way above the ecliptic. When you see it at nightfall, go look up at the big fat moon. One of my favorite pastimes is to check out and stand in awe of the shining big full moon. That will be much higher than the ecliptic, so it's kind of nice to have a high full moon there. The sun is at the south bending, moon at the north bending. But so this does bring the eclipse wonkiness. Our eclipse stories now, that April 30th solar eclipse, we can bring and start accessing something related to this here. And I was talking in a reading earlier this week about the angularity of eclipses and how they take place in a mode, right? In the mode. In this case, these eclipses are now all of 22 taking place in the fixed mode. But when they happen, they can export their changes, their fated beginnings and endings, into the other signs of that mode. So even if you're having, let's say, eclipses in your 10th house, and that's Scorpio, for example, let's just say, for example, this would be Aquarius risings, you can feel first house themes come in when those eclipses hit in the 10th. And that's why you have the concept of angular houses, because they shake each other's foundations. Our career choice impacts our selfhood and our relationships and our home, so that's why the bendings can be important as well, is that you're having a dynamic interaction and exchange with where eclipses will be or where they have been. So that's why I think this can be an eclipsy full moon. It also might be why earlier when I was saying maybe staying home, not getting out of that full moon energy, I probably will. I'm going to go walk around and just feel that energy. But, prayer, I'll come back and maybe pray and activate the bendings and the nature of the bendings as being access points to the spiritual reality, to the unseen realms. And maybe put some mantras on, the full moon at the north bending. They say the north bending is of the nature of Rahu, or the north node. Maybe get some of your Rahu mantras on, a good time for this. I may do that actually. Maybe keep them in my headphones and walk out and see all, like where I am, people gather and there's people just out in the streets and stuff. Maybe, and you can feel it on full moons. I've done it a few times, like these big public squares, and just go out, maybe have some Rahu mantras and kind of feel and be in that energy. Really cool way, I think, to engage. That's why I like being out with full moons, because I like to feel the people. These aren't astrologers. These people don't really know. They might look at the moon, but they don't understand all of the things that astrologers understand about what we see in the heavens. And so a lot of times people might even be totally unaware of the full moon. I remember before I became an astrologer, and it was just more like going through my years, not knowing anything. Occasionally you say, oh, well, look at that moon. It's big tonight. And that's the extent of it, So I'm so grateful I have the astrological knowledge that I have. One of the things I'm most grateful for in my life, actually, is that I became a container for some of this wisdom. So, okay, let me keep going. The next thing about this moon, there's a lot of fixed stars near it, but it does make the closest fixed star that it's conjoined to is Adhafera, a fixed star called Adhafera, right in the main of Leo. And so the other one that it's closest to is Al-Jabha. That's also in the main of Leo. And so we're hitting the mythology and the themes of the Leo constellation come in quite directly with this full moon. And I've got the construction. This is the longest they've been, like a long 20-second thing with their saw out there. Okay, I'm back. I just decided to pause a little bit. That was too long of interrupting the sound. I want to come back. We've got a fixed star conjunction. Adhafra and Al-Jabha. These are two fixed stars, very close. Their positions on the ecliptic is very close to the lunar position on the ecliptic. And those stars are in the main of Leo. And so we think about Leo, sometimes there's a stereotype with Leos that they have this puffed up hair, and a lot of times they'll have big hair or a lot of hair. So, this is what I wanted to bring in, was the notion of when we lead with ourself and these external components to what we are and who we are. Sometimes that can be a little bit, is that really who we are? And with the sun here in Aquarius, it does come back to this theme of maybe too much reliance on projecting an identity, when maybe what we need to be doing is building and in a larger connection with the Aquarian side of things, or relying on the Saturnine structures, as opposed to maybe the pomp of the selfhood and trying to look really good or project something that's really good. Robeson talks about lying. I think that might be where it comes up here, is that we're sort of too much trying to project an image. And so think about that with this full moon. You know, what images are you projecting? Are you too over-reliant on maybe one way of looking at yourself, or one way that you want people to see you, when in reality maybe it's a more connecting through words, right? Aquarius, connecting through building. Mars, the Saturnine, kind of long-term, genuine or authentic or real ways we connect. Maybe it's time to consider how you're doing that, as opposed to the sort of just identity, or more ego-based. Ego's so overused, I really don't like it, but more based on the self we think others want to see. This might, and then we change the main as a representative of that, some kind of external, signal we're sending to hope someone believes a certain thing about us. These are the themes that I think these fixed stars activate. And again, coming back to the Mars-Saturn nature of this full moon, that can be where maybe there's difficulty in projecting that, especially when the sun is in Aquarius. So, okay, now let's shift to the transit of the week. Here's this conversation we've been waiting for. We have the Virgo moon here. In my location, I picked a Sag rising. You get the moon near the midheaven with the Sag rising. It's in the 14th, the 14 degrees of Virgo, the 15th degree. And the thing about it is that the last aspect that this moon made was in opposition to Jupiter in Pisces, and now it applies to conjoin Venus in Capricorn. And Venus loves Capricorn, right? It's a sign of its triplicity. Venus does very well in earth signs. Jupiter rules Pisces, so it's a powerful Venus and a powerful Jupiter. And and the other thing is that Venus is in its own Egyptian terms by this time. Mercury is now in its own Egyptian terms. Mercury ruling this moon by domicile. So it's just a lot of juicy activation with both Venus and Mercury and Jupiter, and the moon making those aspects, separating and applying separating from Jupiter, applying to Venus, ruled by Mercury. And it's what we call a benefic enclosure. This is in the Picatrix, this text the reason why I focus so much on benefic enclosures, it comes from the Picatrix, which was a collection that pulled from all of the books of its time, and these magicians built a text called the Picatrix. But you can see Dorotheus in the Picatrix. You can see the other texts that they were pulling from. Not all of them, it's kind of mysterious too, but it's in there. It just says, listen, when the moon is separating from a benefic and applying to another benefic, that is an opportunity to engage the lunar mansion. So that's why I like to take these opportunities for exploring lunar mansions. And so the thing about this transit is that the lunar mansion is very much expressive of what we just said, the earthy, sensual, intellectual side of Virgo, with a powerful Mercury in its own Egyptian terms ruling, and with Venus in its own Egyptian terms, where the moon is applying to trine Venus. And let's look at it. This is a lunar mansion, Al-Hawa, the 13th lunar mansion. And it's especially good for this lunar mansion. These degrees of Virgo are love degrees and sex degrees. Sexual love. This is the lunarium.co.uk, their summary. It's good for love, sexual love. But then it brings in the mercurial side, the trade and finances. Creative projects, traveling, gardening, healing, building, cutting and the washing of hair. So all of these themes we've already talked about with Venus and Mars joined in Capricorn. That might be sexual love that this is referring to. That transit supports the sexual love. That transit is trine this moon. So you can see how the other planets even in this chart are confirming the themes of this lunar mansion. And then the trade and finances side of it. Mercury powerful in Aquarius again in its Egyptian terms. So this is what I was saying earlier, the purging, maybe selling things. Maybe you're going to sell some possessions this week on this Virgo moon as a way to empower yourself. Maybe you will get out with your love and you're gonna go buy some things, go walk through a city market or something together, shopping with your love or shopping with a friend or someone you care about. It's a great way to just spend time together, do your shopping together, love each other, connect with each other. So I just really love this transit, and you can use it for, you could do all kinds of stuff with it. Just keep in mind it's waning, so you may want to think about the things you're trying to let go of. And it fits that theme again of letting go with the Libra moon and the Scorpio moon that come next, that are more directly, they're ruled actually by domicile by the Mars-Venus conjunction. This is just a supportive trine to the Mars-Venus conjunction, but we may begin letting go of the post-full moon, post-Valentine's Day relational events that took place for you. Okay, let's move here. I'm going to finally get a tarot card, a cartomancy card. Let's just pull a card here, and let's see what we can do. Let's see if we get something to add to the symbol set we've been discussing, and maybe there's something we missed, that these cards can sometimes bring us back here and to tell us, hey, re-engage this theme. So let's see. This card is going to be the okay, it's the heart. It's the Nine of Hearts, the acceptance card, Jupiter in Pisces, the middle decan of Pisces. Wow, this couldn't be a more perfect card. Maybe this is telling us to come back to this discussion about Jupiter and Pisces and just how important it is. It's important in that transit of the week, opposing the Virgo moon. It's important in the sense it's bonifying the moon during that transit of the week. But I think this is more than anything telling us to look forward. Jupiter is about to enter into this decan. In fact, it is there. Let me just go to my solar fire here, and let's just check it out. What's the date of Jupiter's entry into this decan? Well, it has happened. This is the week. It's happened now. It has just happened, actually, in the last couple of days. So we are now with Jupiter in its own decan in Pisces, that middle decan of Pisces. Let me see here. And so, digging into this decan, there's Austin Coppock, the great astrologer Austin Coppock. He's got a book on the decans. Maybe the symbolism in his book can be an opportunity for a deep dive into the themes of this decan. But enjoy Jupiter in this decan all week. And the acceptance card, the Nine of Hearts, these can be emotional. I come to think about this as let me just go back to the PPT. Emotional acceptance, healing and kind of the concept of, and vis-a-vis others, the kind of inner emotional swells that can come when we let go of something or heal things. That's cleansing power of Jupiter, but that's the dynamic, mutable side of Pisces as well. Emotions are mutable. Emotions change. They're always changing. But remember this Venus, Mars in Capricorn now, in the middle decan of Capricorn. So there's a sextile forming here. It's a little bit closer by degree as Jupiter, but in these middle decans. So I'm just going to think about here, this is the final thing I'll say, love people, and try to center love in your healing. Sometimes when people are bad actors or where people have wronged us, they're hurting. They've been traumatized. They are, messed up in the head or in the heart. And I don't think it's not always useful. Obviously, we have to disengage from harmful people with a hard boundary sometimes. But in terms of my inner world, I can send them love and heal and just give them loving energy to kind of really to heal my own heart, And so look for some of this as Valentine's Day passes. I love this card coming here. And Pisces is the huge theme over February, March, and April, culminating in that eclipse ruled by Venus, as Venus is with Jupiter in the 28th degree of Pisces. So it's pointing us to saying, get ready for Pisces, get ready, it's here, it's here. Engage your Pisces, dig deep into your Pisces, and use it for love and for healing and for moving on, the acceptance of everything we've gone through. I think we can come into more of an acceptance phase of the grieving process maybe now, and maybe that's what this card is pointing us to. Okay, that's the weekly tarot, that's the weekly astrology. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here and thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking this video or subscribing to the channel. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep these videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.